Right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is Matty on 96.5 Cayrock, and I have the man himself, Mr. Midge Ure, on the air with us today. Midge, how the devil are you?
I'm incredibly well, actually, considering I'm in America and we must be coming into the fifth week of this tour.
Yeah.
And I mean, who designed America? It's so huge. I mean, the gaps between the cities, everything's like driving from from like Glasgow to London every day. But despite that, I'm incredibly good, thank you.
Yeah, because I looked at your schedule. It's quite a punishing schedule you've set up for yourself there. 'Cause you,
Stupid,
because
stupid schedule.
it's all over the
Yes,
place.
of course.
I mean,
The problem is in America, it's kind of different because the Americans never really got Ultravox back in the early 80s.
okay.
We were too soon for them. So I never achieved the heady heights in America that a lot of other artists did. So the level of touring here is quite basic. There are only three of us traveling around. We're
Yeah.
driving everywhere. It's quite a task, but it's every schoolboy's adventure. You know,
Yeah,
everyone
it
wanted to
is. It
jump in a
is.
car and drive coast to coast across America,
Of
and
course.
that's exactly what we're doing.
That's brilliant. So we'll get to the new project in a minute, but I want to go back into the mist of time, Major, for me, because I watched an interview with you that you did a few years back on STV. We have a couple of things in common. We both got our first guitar at about the same age, and we both have a love for Kraftwerk. Kraftwerk were one of the first bands I ever got into, which was a perfect lead in because I,
Wow.
I I got into Kraftwerk just before the sort of British synth pop explosion, which was perfect timing for when Ultravox happened. From Ultravox exploded on the scene. Uh, so I just wanted you to kind of talk me through that a little bit. The transition from you being a guitarist to discovering synthesizers and changing Ultravox's sound completely, pretty much.
Well, Ultravox were kind of very early exponents of the synthesizer. Even before I think when they put out their first album, some of that was produced by Brian Eno, who, and I think,
Okay.
if my memory serves me well, Brian Eno introduced the synthesizer to Ultravox, and that was it. They were hooked.
Oh,
So they were already
that I
using.
didn't know.
I
Okay.
Yeah, I bought a synth. I bought my first synth in 1978
Yeah.
after hearing Kraftwerk and some of the stuff coming out of Europe because they were early exponents of
Of course. Yeah.
using electronics. So I bought a synthesizer and brought it into the Rich Kids, the band that I was in at the time,
Uh-huh.
which immediately killed the band. Half the band hated it, half the band loved it. And I just wanted to use this machine, this instrument that was as limited as your imagination,
Exactly.
and incorporate it with guitars and stuff. So it was an addition rather than a replacement. And of course, out of that, we formed Visage, this broken band with Rusty Egan and I put Visage together.
What a record though. Fade to Grey is got to be up there in the all time synth pop classics. I would say. I
Well,
remember that coming out, and I was like, that's something else.
it was, you know what, it was still a song. That was a
Yeah.
problem. A lot of
Yeah.
people who jumped onto the synth thing, could make all the noises, but they didn't really have many songs. So Fade to Grey was still very much a very there was something very appealing about it,
Yeah.
but it was electronic through and through,
And super catchy. Yeah, I mean, there were other bands knocking around, Cabaret Voltaire and all that kind of stuff, who very, very clever mechanics and with the electronics, but there was no, as you say, no real songs. And something you've always put out, whichever project you've been doing, is like actual songs. Uh, because now I want to get we will get to Band in a Box, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Midge. I just want to
Go
talk
ahead.
about Band Aid and Live Aid for a little bit,
Okay.
and I'll let you tell the story of it. But then now it's a big anniversary next year, and the rumor mill, the music gossip mill, which we have to stay plugged into all the time, is saying all kinds of different things. So if you could just give us a little story about the original setup and how it came together, and then are there any plans to do anything for the big anniversary next year?
Okay.
You don't have to tell me if there's if you've signed NDAs, then I understand.
You know what? If there are big plans for next year, nobody's told me. So
Oh, okay.
I would kind of quash that one right now. Although that can change. Who knows? When you're dealing with Mr. Geldof, whichever way the wind's blowing, we're saying nothing's happening right now, but at the drop of a hat, things might change. But as I speak, hand on heart, there's nothing that we know of. There's a big documentary getting put together right now, telling the story of Band Aid, Band Aid 2, Band Aid, 10, Band Aid 20, Band Aid,
Yeah.
right? So it's happening right now. There's going to be a series of documentaries because it's a massive thing, not just from the music world, but from the social world as well. So it's a little bit of history now. But it all started again when yeah, you must remember the TV program, The Tube,
I
which came
do,
from Newcastle. It
of
was a
course,
music
yeah.
program. Yeah, great program. And I was on that, and one of the co-hosts, Paula Yates, Bob Geldof's girlfriend,
Of course,
and
yeah.
I'd been chatting to Paula. Bob called her and had just seen the initial BBC footage of the famine,
Aye.
and he was at home looking after kids or whatever, and he didn't feel that the Boomtown Rats were in a position to do anything because I think they'd kind of semi-retired or whatever,
Okay.
and he asked me if I would help, and we met up a couple of days later and came to the very obvious conclusion that we are skilled at nothing other than possibly writing a song. So we thought, well, if we write a song and we make it a Christmas song, the charts freeze over Christmas and
Of
New
course.
Year. So if you get a number one just before Christmas, you can sell twice as many records as a number one at any other time of the year.
There you
So
go.
we specifically set out to write a Christmas tune. We couldn't just cover White Christmas or
Yeah.
standard, because 50% of the money generated from a record sale goes to the writers. So if we wrote something and gave the songwriting royalties to the Band Aid Trust,
Ah,
then we might be able to generate £100,000. That was the aim. That was the goal. That was a realistic goal. And then, of course, the whole thing just grew and grew and grew. Bob came up with some half-baked song. I came up with a half-baked melody, the da 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 da,
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
thing. And then I spent 4 days in the studio playing all the instruments, doing all the arrangements, doing all of that, while Bob ran up my telephone bill, calling up all our mates and saying, right, you have to be there on Sunday, and you have to come along and add your strength and your name. And Trevor Horn, the producer, gave us 24 hours in the studio. That was the bit that everyone saw when all the artists
Oh,
turned up.
okay.
Everyone was there, all contributing their bit, and their fan base, which was just as important as their
I think
voices.
so. I mean, let's first of all, it's a bloody good song, like regardless of all the people who are singing it. But I remember being a kid watching it, and you're looking out for your favorites every time you see the video. I think that was one of the magic aspects to it.
Well, also the fact that we hadn't written enough lines in the song to give everyone a full line to sing,
Yeah,
so we had to kind of chop things halfway through and go, right. So it's Sting there, and it's Simon Le Bon there, and it's Bono singing this, and the song itself, the record itself, became a bit of a game for people because they'd sit there and spot who was singing where, because it wasn't an obvious point where it would
yeah, yeah.
another singer would take over. So what started as a big mistake turned into something that was a bonus for the record.
Fantastic. And then of course, uh, possibly one of the greatest concerts of all time. Well, two of the greatest concerts of all time over this side, over the pond side of the pond you're on now, and obviously over here at Wembley. Some of the performances on that day, just out of this world for Live
It
Aid, of
was
course.
it was outstanding. I mean, it was chaos backstage, as you can imagine, and it
Yeah,
was very nerve-wracking because it was forgetting the television audience. you're at Wembley Stadium. That's a big
Of
gig.
course, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to get it wrong. And for someone like Ultravox, who at the time used to do 5-hour sound checks to make sure the technology was working properly, to walk on having done no sound check and keep
No
everything
sound
crossed that
check at all.
everything was
Just
working.
just a
No
line check
sound
and
check.
get
You
on with it.
did a line check the day before, and then you walked on and you did your show, hoping that everything was plugged in.
Wow.
And it was great. It was a great moment. But I did get to see Queen do that amazing show. I
Midge.
did get to see
Wow.
U2 do
Yeah.
their thing. It was spectacular.
That U2 version, I'm quite a U2 fan on the slide, and that version of Bad that Bono just seemed to have come up with off the top of his head on that day. Uh, I can remember every second of it. That was special. And Queen, uh,
And
yeah,
Queen reminded people what Queen were.
yeah,
People
sure.
forget and they think, oh, they've had their day and things have moved on. They they took their 18 minutes of time. Everyone got 18 minutes on stage,
That was it.
and
Oh,
they took their 18 minutes and reminded everyone just how brilliant they were.
yeah, fantastic.
And then, of course, you too just seized the moment and showed the world just what they were about to become. They were about to become the biggest band on the planet.
Yeah, that's when I play that song every once in a while on my morning show, and I'll say that was the moment when U2 said, "We're taking over the world." By the way, get ready. And all at Live Aid, brilliant. Well, I look forward to see the documentary. I can't wait for that to come out. So we should be seeing that next year sometime. Do you think?
Well, it's probably this year. It'll be in time,
Oh, okay,
hopefully in
good
time
stuff.
for the 40th anniversary of Do They Know It's Christmas.
Oh, brilliant. I look forward to seeing that. Okay, so to the current project, I'll be there next Saturday. I'm on the third row with a quite a large Scottish contingent actually.
Yes.
I'll be the scouser amongst the Scotsmen. So we're all looking forward to it. But Band in a Box, uh, if you can just let our listeners know what it's all about.
Well, 2 years ago, my old friend Howard Jones, who was much more commercially successful in America than I was, wanted me to go on a tour with him to open up and do a package thing. He wanted like-minded artists to perform together. And I had to put my Scottish hat on and explain to him the fiscal side of things, saying this doesn't
Yeah,
work for me. I can't bring out a full band and a full crew and whatever because what I'll get paid for doing this is way below what you get paid. So we tried to figure out a way of doing this where I could come out and perform, and I came up with Band in a Box. So I used one of his keyboard players,
right.
and I programmed some uh, drums and bass synth in the box. And I played keyboards and guitar and vocals live along with his keyboard player and figured out that we make a massive sound, just two people on stage.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing now. Different keyboard player. But the response to that was phenomenal because a lot of people in America never had the opportunity to see Ultravox and obviously never had the opportunity to see Visage because it was a
Yeah.
studio project. So this is as close as you will get to the sound that Ultravox would have made on tour. So it's quite an Ultravox heavy set that I'm doing, although I dip into a bit of Visage and solo stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But it's going down a storm. People absolutely love it. I was a bit reticent of doing this because it felt like a glorified karaoke to me, thinking
I
oh,
know
I'm
what
just
you.
going to walk on and sing. But it's not. It's nothing like that. It is all the human feel. It's the guitar stuff is live, and people can't believe the noise that we make, just the two of us. So it's good. It's easy.
The technology's there now. Where if you've got the nous to use it properly, I guess like you surely have. Uh, that's how you can make that brilliant sound. I think audiences have moved on now as well with the technology. Uh, so I when 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 Mark um from Silverlight, one of the promoters, when he said He's actually in my studio talking about something completely different. He said, "Oh, by the way, Midge Ure's playing here on the 14th of September." I was like, "Shut up!" Like, you know, we are on a tiny island in the middle of nowhere, and it's a huge thing for us to have someone like yourself coming. Can't wait for the gig.
I listen. I have strong affiliations with tiny islands in the middle of nowhere. You know,
Yeah,
I go up into the northwest of Scotland and go to Skye and Mull and all of that stuff.
beautiful part.
But I
Beautiful.
also owned a house in Montserrat. I owned a house in Montserrat in the Caribbean. So,
Okay.
you know, yeah, I lived there for a while.
Did you
My
ever did you
association
ever
with the
record
islands.
at Air Studios?
Yes, that
You did.
I bought on Montserrat. It's because I was working with George Martin and Ultravox. George was producing Ultravox for the Quartet album, so
Ah,
we spent a
okay.
lot of time on Montserrat. I ended up buying a little station house there, and then Hurricane Hugo came along and had to
Aye,
rebuild
aye,
it,
aye.
and then the volcano exploded. So it was a higher powers way of saying what's a boy from Glasgow doing with a house in the Caribbean.
Exactly. Well, I did enjoy the interview on STV you did a while back. I know Glasgow fairly well, and from fairly humble beginnings in Cambuslang to all what you've achieved over your career is quite a wonderful story, really. And I absolutely, like all of us, we can't wait to hear it all live for the first time in years for me. Uh, down at our theatre here in the Cayman Islands. Where are you now? Somewhere in between Texas and Georgia.
We're still in, yeah, we're just about to do a 2 day drive. And I mean 2 days. We're driving from Austin, where I am right now.
Yeah.
We're going to stop off for a break in New Orleans and then do another massive drive up to Montgomery. And then the next day just pop along a couple of hours to Atlanta.
Okay.
America's a big, big, big country.
It's
But
ridiculously
it's
big.
good, and as I said, it's every schoolboy's dream. And by the way, I have to say, Liverpool to me is just Glasgow South. We've got the same
Hundred
the
percent.
same comedy, we've got the same sense of humor, with the same characters. You know, we're just divided by Hadrian's Wall.
Exactly. But my best mate down here is he's a Ouija. Moved out to Dunoon later in life, but originally from Glasgow. And there's quite a few Glaswegians here now, and a few Scousers as well. We're taking over slowly but surely, Midge. So listen, all the best on the traveling over the next few days. Enjoy the delicious food of the American South, and we look forward to welcoming you a week tomorrow.
Yeah, I know it's rapidly approaching, but I'm looking forward to coming back. I've been to the Caymans once before. That was a long time ago. It was a short visit, but yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I know how mad your schedule is. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to us today on Cayrock. And again, I wish you the best of luck with the gig. And as they say, mate, get laldy.
I will certainly get it, Laldy.
All right. See you next week.
Cheers, thank you.